daughter of a single dad, spoke 5 languages, and saved a $30 million deal for a millionaire woman. Before the story begins, let's make this personal. What brought you here today? A recommendation? Curiosity, or maybe just the universe guiding you? David Martinez stared at the eviction notice taped to his apartment door, his hands trembling as 6-year-old Emma tugged at his sleeve. "Papa, what does the paper say?" she asked, her bright green eyes filled with concern. 3 months behind on rent, his freelance translation work barely covering groceries, let alone their cramped Boston apartment. The stack of unpaid bills on his kitchen counter seemed to grow taller each day, mocking his attempts to make ends meet in one of America's most expensive cities. "Nothing important, sweetheart," David lied, crumpling the paper with shaking fingers. Emma had been speaking 5 languages since age 4, English, Spanish, Mandarin, French, and Portuguese, a gift that amazed everyone except bill collectors. Her mother had abandoned them 2 years ago, leaving David to raise their linguistic prodigy alone while struggling to survive as a part-time translator for small businesses and immigration lawyers. "Dad, you look really sad," Emma said, her voice carrying the wisdom of someone far beyond her years. "We'll be okay, right?" The way she effortlessly switched between languages during conversations always caught him off guard. Where other children her age struggled with simple sentences, Emma navigated multiple languages like a seasoned diplomat, absorbing vocabulary and cultural nuances from YouTube videos, library books, and conversations with neighbors from around the world. The refrigerator hummed emptily behind them, containing little more than expired milk and half a loaf of bread. David's laptop sat on their second-hand kitchen table. The screen cracked from when he'd dropped it rushing to a client meeting last month. Their apartment was tiny, but Emma had transformed it into a linguistic playground, with sticky notes in different languages labeling everything from the microwave to her stuffed animals. That evening, as Emma practiced writing Chinese characters at their kitchen table with remarkable precision, David's laptop chimed with an urgent email notification. The subject line made his heart race. "Emergency translation needed. Mandarin to English must be perfect. $500 today if available." The sender was Rebecca Chen, CEO of Chen Industries, a Fortune 500 company he'd only dreamed of working for. David's fingers hovered over the keyboard, afraid to believe this stroke of luck was real. $500 could buy them groceries for a month, maybe even catch up on some utilities. He dialed the number immediately, his hands shaking with nervous energy. "Mr. Martinez? Thank God you're available." Rebecca's voice carried the strain of someone dealing with a crisis. "I have a crucial business document in Mandarin Chinese. My regular translator is in the hospital with appendicitis, and I need this translation perfect by tomorrow morning. The entire deal depends on accuracy. Can you handle complex technical business terminology?" "Absolutely," David replied, sending up a silent prayer that his rusty Mandarin skills wouldn't fail him now. "Please send the document over right away." As Emma colored nearby, humming a French lullaby she'd learned from a YouTube channel, David opened the email attachment. His stomach dropped like a stone. The file contained incredibly complex merger agreements, detailed financial projections, and legal terminology far beyond his current expertise level. One mistranslation could potentially cost millions of dollars and destroy his reputation forever. "Emma," he called softly, a desperate idea forming in his mind. "Want to help Daddy with his work tonight?" Emma bounced over to David's laptop with infectious enthusiasm, her pigtails swinging as she moved. "Oh wow, Chinese characters, these look really easy." She pointed at the screen with tiny fingers that seemed too small to comprehend such complex concepts. "This says acquisition proposal for $30 million, Dad. But look at the grammar structure here. It suggests they're under serious time pressure to close this deal." David stared at his daughter in complete amazement, his mouth hanging open. He'd been struggling with that exact same sentence for 20 agonizing minutes, consulting 3 different dictionaries and online translation tools. "Emma, sweetheart, how do you possibly know business terms in Chinese? These are incredibly advanced concepts. YouTube videos mostly." She shrugged with the casual confidence that only children possess. "And Mrs. Wong at the corner grocery store teaches me new words every time you buy groceries there. She used to work for really big companies in Shanghai before moving to America 15 years ago. She tells me stories about important business meetings and cultural differences between countries." David felt a mixture of pride and bewilderment wash over him. While other parents worried about their children watching too much television, his daughter was apparently getting an advanced education in international business communications from an elderly Chinese immigrant, and educational YouTube channels. As David continued struggling through the document, Emma climbed onto his lap, her small finger confidently tracing the complex characters on the screen. "Papa, this part right here is completely wrong," she said suddenly, pointing to a crucial clause buried deep in the legal language. They translated this word as exclusive, but in this specific business context it actually means monopolistic control. That completely changes everything about the entire deal structure and legal implications. David's blood ran cold as the implications hit him. If Emma was correct, and he had every reason to believe she was, then the entire $30 million merger was hanging on this single mistranslation. A decision worth more money than he'd see in 10 lifetimes could be completely wrong because of one incorrectly interpreted word. Rebecca Chen answered her phone on the first ring when David called back, her voice tight with stress. "Mr. Martinez, please tell me you have good news for me." "Ms. Chen, I need to ask you something very important. Do you still have access to the original Chinese document? There might be a critical error in the translation you received from the previous translator." A long, heavy pause filled the phone line. "What kind of error are we talking about here?" "We're scheduled to sign the final agreements tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock. David looked down at Emma, who nodded encouragingly, her green eyes full of confidence in her abilities. "The exclusivity clause in Section 7. It's been seriously mistranslated. Instead of granting exclusive distribution rights as currently written, the Chinese actually establishes monopolistic control over the entire market sector, which could trigger federal antitrust investigations." Rebecca's sharp intake of breath was clearly audible through the phone. "Hold on, Mr. Martinez. I'm immediately conferencing in my entire legal team." Within 5 minutes, 3 corporate lawyers and Rebecca were all on the call, their voices tense with concern about the potential legal implications. Emma tugged gently at David's sleeve and whispered urgently, "Ask them about Section 14 too, Dad. The payment terms are really ambiguous and could be interpreted in multiple ways." "There's more," David continued, his daughter's unwavering confidence bolstering his own courage. "Section 14 contains extremely ambiguous payment terms that could be legally interpreted in at least 3 different ways, potentially creating massive financial liability." After an intensive hour of verification calls with their Chinese business partners, Rebecca's voice was shaky with relief and gratitude. "Mr. Martinez, you and your source just saved our company from a complete legal nightmare. That mistranslation would have cost us the entire deal and potentially exposed us to federal investigation for monopolistic practices. I want to meet this translator immediately," Rebecca declared with the authority of someone accustomed to getting exactly what she wanted. "Can you come to my office first thing tomorrow morning? I have a business proposition that could potentially change both of your lives forever." David glanced nervously at Emma, who was now reading the Chinese document aloud like it was a simple bedtime story, her pronunciation flawless. "Ms. Chen, I should probably mention something important. My 6-year-old daughter helped significantly with this translation. She's quite remarkably gifted with languages." "Your daughter helped? How old did you say she was?" 6 years old, David admitted, bracing himself for the inevitable disbelief and skepticism. An incredibly long silence stretched across the phone connection. "Mr. Martinez, I want you to bring her with you tomorrow, 9 a.m. sharp, Chen Industries headquarters, Prudential Tower downtown. Don't be late." That night, as Emma methodically brushed her teeth, she chattered excitedly in French about meeting a real CEO lady and seeing a super tall building with important business people. David lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, wondering if tomorrow would bring incredible opportunity or complete embarrassment. His daughter's gift was absolutely undeniable, but would a Fortune 500 CEO actually take a 6-year-old child seriously in a business context? The next morning, David dressed Emma in her absolute best dress, a hand-me-down from her older cousin that was still slightly too big, and put on his own worn but clean suit. The Prudential Tower's gleaming marble lobby made him feel severely underdressed and completely out of place among the sharply dressed business professionals rushing past. "Wow, Dad, this building is exactly like the ones in my Shanghai business YouTube videos," Emma exclaimed in perfect Mandarin, causing several passing business people to stop and stare in obvious amazement. Rebecca Chen's 52nd floor corner office offered breathtaking views of Boston Harbor and the surrounding city. She appeared younger than David had expected, perhaps 35 years old, with impeccably tailored business suits and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to miss absolutely nothing. When they entered her spacious office, she was finishing an obviously heated phone conversation in rapid, fluent Mandarin. Emma listened intently to the conversation, her head tilted in concentration, then whispered to David in Spanish. She's really frustrated because someone important in Beijing isn't understanding her proposal for expanding their manufacturing operations. Rebecca hung up the phone and turned to face them with professional composure. "You must be Emma," she said, crouching down to the little girl's eye level. "Your father tells me you speak 5 different languages fluently." "Yes, I also speak Portuguese and French pretty well," Emma replied cheerfully, cycling through languages like she was changing television channels, completely unaware of how extraordinary her abilities truly were. Rebecca's professionally maintained eyebrows shot up in surprise. She said something in extremely complex Mandarin, a sophisticated business idiom that David barely understood even with his translation experience. Emma giggled delightedly and responded with complete fluency. "You're testing me. You said the early bird catches the worm, but in business context it means first mover advantage in market positioning. My YouTube teacher, Mr. Lee, explained that exact phrase last week." Rebecca stood up very slowly, staring at Emma like she'd just discovered an incredibly rare and valuable gem sitting casually in her office. "Emma," Rebecca said very carefully, her voice controlled but amazed, "I'm going to say something in Portuguese. I want you to tell me not just what the words mean, but what I'm really trying to communicate." She spoke a rapid, complex sentence with perfect pronunciation. Emma tilted her small head thoughtfully, considering not just the words but the subtle implications. "You said the contract needs very careful review, but your tone and word choice suggest you already know there's a specific problem hidden in the language, and you're testing whether I can identify the issue without you telling me directly what to look for." Rebecca's carefully maintained professional composure completely cracked, replaced by genuine amazement. "David, do you fully understand what your daughter just demonstrated? That's advanced sociolinguistic awareness at a graduate level. She's not just mechanically translating words. She's reading context, vocal tone, cultural implications, and implied meaning simultaneously." David felt an overwhelming surge of pride mixed with growing concern about the implications. "She's always been incredibly special with languages, but I never fully realized the depth of her abilities until recently. Mr. Martinez, I have business offices in 12 different countries around the world. I spend hundreds of thousands of dollars annually on professional translation services, and most of them completely miss these kinds of cultural subtleties." Rebecca pulled out her expensive smartphone. "Emma, I'm going to play a recorded conversation from our Beijing office. There's been ongoing confusion about a manufacturing timeline that's costing us money. Can you listen carefully and tell me what the real underlying issue actually is?" As rapid Mandarin flowed from the phone speakers, Emma's expression grew increasingly serious and focused. She listened intently for 3 full minutes, occasionally nodding with understanding, her young face showing remarkable concentration. "The problem isn't actually the timeline at all," Emma said finally, her voice confident but respectful. "Mr. Zhang is saying all the right words about meeting deadlines, but he's really worried about quality control standards. He uses very formal, polite language, but his specific word choices suggest he's genuinely concerned about rushing the manufacturing process. He's not comfortable saying no directly to authority figures, so he's expressing his concerns indirectly through discussing scheduling issues instead." Rebecca stared at her phone, then back at Emma, her expression one of complete disbelief. "I've been trying to solve this communication breakdown for 3 frustrating weeks. My entire team interpreted his responses as a simple scheduling conflict. In traditional Chinese business culture," Emma continued matter-of-factly, as if discussing something as simple as the weather, "direct disagreement with superiors can be considered very impolite and disrespectful, so serious concerns are often expressed indirectly through discussion of related topics that seem safer to address." "Where on earth did you learn about Chinese business culture?" Rebecca asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mrs. Wong at the grocery store teaches me about her old job when Dad buys groceries, YouTube videos from business professors, and sometimes Dad gets frustrated translating business documents, so I help him understand the cultural parts that don't translate directly." Rebecca walked slowly to her floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at Boston Harbor with obvious deep thought. When she turned back around, her expression was intensely focused and determined. "David, Emma, I want to make you both an offer that might sound completely crazy." Rebecca sat behind her massive mahogany desk, her fingers steepled in front of her as she considered her words carefully. David, I want to hire you immediately as my senior cultural liaison translator. The salary would be $200,000 annually, plus full benefits package, plus a company apartment in downtown Boston. David's breath caught in his throat, and he felt momentarily dizzy. Ms. Chen, that's incredibly generous beyond my wildest dreams, but I'm not finished with my proposal. Rebecca's intense eyes shifted to focus directly on Emma. Emma, I want to create something completely unprecedented in the business world. A junior cultural consultant position specifically designed for you. You would work directly with our international communications team, helping us understand not just what our global business partners are saying, but what they actually mean on deeper cultural levels. Emma bounced excitedly in her chair, her eyes lighting up with enthusiasm. Like being a detective but with words and feelings instead of clues? Exactly like being a detective with words and cultural feelings. Rebecca smiled genuinely for the first time since they'd met. You would attend virtual meetings with international clients, review important business documents before major decisions, and help us avoid the kind of $30 million translation mistakes that nearly happened yesterday. David felt completely overwhelmed by the magnitude of the offer. Ms. Chen, she's only 6 years old. What about regular school, normal childhood development, playing with friends her own age? I've already thought extensively about those concerns, Rebecca said quickly, clearly having anticipated this objection. Completely flexible schedule, private tutoring with certified teachers, child development oversight by licensed professionals. Emma would work maybe 10 hours per week maximum, always with you present for supervision. And David, the salary I quoted? That's just your base pay. Emma's consulting fees would be completely separate additional income. Emma looked up at her father with those impossibly wise green eyes. Dad, could we help people understand each other better? Like when Mrs. Wong gets sad because grocery store customers don't understand her accent and get impatient with her? David's throat tightened with emotion. Just 3 months ago, they were facing eviction and wondering where their next meal would come from. Now they were being offered financial security beyond his wildest dreams, but more importantly, a chance to use Emma's incredible gift to help people communicate across cultural barriers. There's even more to consider, Rebecca continued, leaning forward with obvious excitement. Yesterday's merger deal? It's with Tanaka Industries in Tokyo, Japan. When I explained to them about the translation error you caught, they specifically requested to meet the translator who identified the problem. Emma, they want to meet you personally. Japanese business executives requesting to meet a 6-year-old American girl? David shook his head in continued disbelief. The CEO, Mr. Tanaka, has a business philosophy about wisdom coming from unexpected sources and places. When I told him about Emma's abilities, he said, and I'm quoting him directly, "A child who sees truth through language barriers possesses exactly the kind of gift the modern business world desperately needs." Emma tugged gently at David's sleeve with her small hand. "Papa, remember what you always tell me about helping people when we have special abilities?" David remembered his exact words, spoken so many times. If you have a gift that can help others, it's selfish not to use it responsibly. He looked at his daughter, then back at Rebecca, feeling the enormous weight of this life-changing decision pressing down on his shoulders. "I need some time to think about this carefully," David said finally, his voice heavy with the responsibility of the moment. Rebecca nodded with understanding. "Of course this is a major life decision, but David, Emma, this isn't just about money or career advancement. Your daughter has a genuinely rare gift that could revolutionize how international business communication works. The question you need to answer is, are you both ready to change not just your own lives but potentially how the entire world approaches cross-cultural business relationships?" As they left the impressive Prudential Tower, Emma skipped happily beside David, chattering enthusiastically in a mixture of languages about helping people understand each other better across different cultures. David realized their lives had just taken a dramatic turn that neither of them could have possibly imagined even a week ago. That quiet evening, David sat on their threadbare couch watching Emma patiently teach her collection of stuffed animals different languages with remarkable dedication. "Mr. Bear speaks only English, but Mrs. Rabbit speaks Spanish," she explained to her toys with perfect seriousness, as if they were actual students in her imaginary classroom. His phone buzzed insistently with a text message from Rebecca. "David, I've attached detailed employment contracts for your careful review. Also, the Tanaka Industries meeting is officially scheduled for next week via video conference. Emma would potentially become the youngest business consultant in recorded corporate history. Take all the time you need for this decision, but please know this. Yesterday proved your daughter isn't just academically gifted. She's potentially revolutionary for international business. David opened the email attachment, his eyes widening dramatically at the salary figures and benefit packages. Emma's consulting fee alone was substantially more than he'd managed to earn in the past 2 years combined. But more significant than the money, Rebecca's words continued echoing in his mind. Revolutionary. Dad? Emma looked up from her stuffed animal language school. Mrs. Wong came by the apartment while you were in the bathroom earlier. She brought us tea and fortune cookies from her store. David realized he hadn't heard the doorbell ring. Mrs. Wong stood quietly in their small kitchen, her weathered face creased with obvious concern about something important. David, she said in her heavily accented but carefully chosen English. Emma, tell me about big business lady offer. I very worried about little girl. Emma immediately switched to fluent Mandarin, speaking rapidly and expressively with Mrs. Wong. David caught familiar fragments, something about helping people communicate, bridging cultural gaps, being very careful with important responsibilities. Mrs. Wong's expression gradually shifted from worried concern to growing amazement as Emma explained the situation in detail. Finally, she turned back to David, tears forming in her wise old eyes. David, you know I worked 30 years in Shanghai for big international companies before coming to America. I see many translator, many business consultant over decades. Emma, she paused, searching carefully for the right English words. Emma has special gift I never see before. She understand not just words but heart and soul behind words. Mrs. Wong, I'm honestly scared, David admitted with complete honesty. She's still so young, and this seems like such enormous responsibility. The elderly woman smiled warmly, patting Emma's head with obvious affection. In China, we have very old saying, wisdom not measured by years lived, but by depth of understanding achieved. Emma has old wise soul living in young body. That night, as David carefully tucked Emma into her small bed, she looked up at him with those serious, impossibly mature eyes. Dad, if we help Ms. Chen with her business, can we also help Mrs. Wong somehow? She gets really sad when people at the grocery store don't understand her accent and get impatient. David's heart clenched with overwhelming love and pride. Even faced with the possibility of wealth and professional prestige, Emma's first instinctive thought was helping their elderly immigrant neighbor feel more understood and accepted. Maybe we can help lots of people understand each other better across different cultures, he said softly, stroking her hair. Emma smiled peacefully, switching to Portuguese for her nightly good-night ritual. Good night, Papa. Tomorrow will be amazing, right? As David turned off the bedroom light, he realized his 6-year-old daughter had just made the decision for both of them with her pure heart and generous spirit. They weren't just accepting a lucrative job offer, they were embracing a destiny that neither had imagined possible just days ago. His phone buzzed one final time with another message from Rebecca. P.S. Mr. Tanaka specifically requested that Emma choose which language she'd prefer for tomorrow's preliminary introductory call. He believes her instinctive choice will reveal something important about cross-cultural communication psychology. David stared at the message, then looked back at Emma's peacefully sleeping form. Tomorrow, his extraordinary daughter would make business history. The question that remained was the corporate world truly ready for Emma Martinez? 3 days later, David found himself adjusting Emma's small blazer in Rebecca's conference room, preparing for the most important video call of their lives. The room's massive screen displayed Tanaka Industries, Tokyo, in bold letters, with a countdown timer showing 2 minutes until connection. Remember, sweetheart, David whispered nervously. Just be yourself, but this is very important business. Emma nodded solemnly, then surprised everyone by walking to Rebecca's chair. Ms. Chen, may I suggest we start the meeting in Japanese? Mr. Tanaka will appreciate the cultural respect, and it will show we understand international business etiquette. Rebecca's eyes widened. Emma, that's incredibly sophisticated thinking. But do you speak Japanese fluently enough for business discussion? I've been practicing with YouTube videos and online lessons since you told us about this meeting, Emma replied matter-of-factly. Mrs. Wong introduced me to her friend Mr. Sato, who runs the sushi restaurant downtown. He's been teaching me formal business Japanese every afternoon. David stared at his daughter in amazement. While he'd been worrying about this meeting for 3 days, Emma had been systematically preparing herself with the dedication of a seasoned professional. The screen flickered to life, revealing a distinguished Japanese man in his 60s, flanked by 3 younger executives in identical dark suits. Mr. Tanaka's weathered face carried the gravity of someone who'd built a billion-dollar empire from nothing. "Good morning," Rebecca began in English, but Emma gently interrupted. "Ohayo gozaimasu, Tanaka-san," Emma said with a perfect bow toward the camera. "Watashi wa Emma Martinez desu. Thank you for taking time to meet with us today." The effect on the Japanese executives was immediate and dramatic. Mr. Tanaka's stoic expression cracked into genuine surprise, then broke into the warmest smile David had ever seen on a business call. "Remarkable," Mr. Tanaka replied in accented but clear English. "Miss Emma, your pronunciation is excellent, and your bow shows proper respect. I am very impressed already." Emma beamed with pride. "My friend Mr. Sato taught me that respect is the foundation of all successful business relationships. He said you would appreciate traditional courtesy." Mr. Tanaka leaned forward, his eyes twinkling with interest. "Miss Emma, before we discuss business, may I ask you something personal? What language do you think in?" Emma tilted her head thoughtfully. "That's a really interesting question, Mr. Tanaka. I think it depends on what I'm thinking about. When I'm solving problems, I think in English because that's my strongest language. But when I'm thinking about feelings or trying to understand what people really mean, I think in whatever language feels most honest for that situation." The Japanese executives exchanged amazed glances. Mr. Tanaka's lead translator whispered something urgently in his ear. "Miss Emma, Mr. Tanaka continued, "My translator tells me your answer shows what we call kokoro no rikai, understanding of the heart. This is very rare, even among experienced international business people." Rebecca seized the moment. "Mr. Tanaka, Emma demonstrated this exact ability when she identified the translation error that could have cost both our companies millions of dollars and legal troubles." "Yes, Ms. Chen explained this situation to me." Mr. Tanaka nodded gravely. "But I want to understand how Miss Emma saw what professional translators missed. Emma, can you explain your thinking process?" Emma's expression grew serious and focused. "Well, Mr. Tanaka, most people translate words, but words are just the surface. Underneath words are feelings, cultural expectations, and hidden meanings. When I read that contract, the Chinese words felt uncomfortable, like someone was trying to say something polite but hide something scary at the same time." Mr. Tanaka sat back in his chair, clearly stunned. "Miss Emma, you have just described what takes most international negotiators decades to learn. You understand that business is about human relationships, not just legal documents." David felt a surge of pride so strong it almost brought tears to his eyes. His 6-year-old daughter was holding her own in a conversation with one of Asia's most successful business leaders. "Mr. Tanaka," Emma continued with growing confidence, "Mrs. Wong told me that in Japanese business culture, trust is more important than contracts. She said you probably want to understand who we really are as people before deciding if you want to work with us." The silence on the video call stretched for several long seconds. Finally, Mr. Tanaka spoke, his voice filled with genuine respect. "Miss Emma, in 60 years of business, I have never met anyone who understood this principle so clearly at such a young age. You are absolutely correct. Character matters more than credentials." Mr. Tanaka leaned forward, his expression growing more serious. "Miss Emma, I have a test for you, if you're willing. I'm going to describe a business situation, and I want you to tell me what you think is really happening beneath the surface." Emma nodded eagerly, her small hands folded professionally in her lap. "I'm ready, Mr. Tanaka. Imagine this scenario," Mr. Tanaka began carefully. "A German company wants to partner with a Brazilian company. The Germans send very detailed contracts with precise timelines and exact specifications. The Brazilians respond with enthusiasm, but ask for more flexible deadlines and want to meet in person before signing anything. The Germans think the Brazilians are disorganized and unreliable. The Brazilians think the Germans are cold and don't trust them. What do you think is the real problem?" Emma's brow furrowed in concentration for nearly a minute. David held his breath, wondering if his daughter could possibly handle such a complex international business scenario. "I think both companies want the same thing, a successful partnership, but they're speaking different cultural languages," Emma said slowly. "The Germans show respect and trust by being very organized and detailed, because in their culture, precision means you take someone seriously. The Brazilians show respect and trust by wanting personal relationships first, because in their culture business is about friendship and human connection." She paused, gathering her thoughts. Neither company is wrong, but they're both misunderstanding what the other's behavior means. The Germans aren't cold. They're being respectful in their way. The Brazilians aren't disorganized, they're being respectful in their way. Mr. Tanaka's eyes widened significantly. And what would you suggest to solve this problem? Maybe someone could explain to the Germans that Brazilians build trust through personal relationships. So the meeting request shows they're taking the partnership seriously, not being difficult. And maybe someone could explain to the Brazilians that Germans build trust through careful planning, so the detailed contracts show they're committed to success, not being suspicious. The Japanese executives were now whispering excitedly among themselves. Mr. Tanaka raised his hand for silence. Miss Emma, you have just solved a real problem that cost my company $2 million last year, he said with obvious amazement. We lost a partnership with a Brazilian firm because of exactly this cultural misunderstanding. Rebecca's jaw dropped. Emma, that was incredible analysis for someone with no formal business training. Thank you, Emma said simply. Mrs. Wong always says that most fights happen because people are good at talking, but bad at listening to what's really being said. Mr. Tanaka suddenly stood up in his office, causing his executives to quickly follow suit. Miss Emma, Mr. Martinez, Miss Chen, I have a proposal that will sound very unusual. David's heart began racing again. Every conversation with business leaders seemed to end with life-changing proposals. Next month, I am hosting an international business summit in Tokyo. The world's largest companies send their top cultural consultants and international relations experts. These are people with decades of experience and advanced degrees from prestigious universities. Emma listened intently, her green eyes bright with curiosity. I want to invite Emma to be our youngest keynote speaker, Mr. Tanaka continued. I believe her perspective on cross-cultural communication could revolutionize how international business operates. David felt the room spinning around him. Mr. Tanaka, that's an incredible honor. But Emma has never spoken publicly and she's only 6 years old. Papa, Emma said quietly, remember what you taught me about fear? You said being scared means something is important enough to care about. Mr. Tanaka smiled warmly. Miss Emma, I will personally ensure you have all the support you need. My team includes child development specialists and presentation coaches. But I believe the business world needs to hear your natural wisdom. Rebecca was furiously taking notes. Mr. Tanaka, this could establish Emma as the world's youngest international business consultant. The media attention alone would be unprecedented. The keynote speech would be 30 minutes, Mr. Tanaka explained. You would simply share your thoughts on understanding people across different cultures. No pressure, no complicated business terms, just your honest perspective. Emma looked thoughtful. Could I tell stories about Mrs. Wong and Mr. Sato and how they taught me about respect and friendship? And maybe about how misunderstandings happen when people use different ways to show they care. That would be perfect, Mr. Tanaka replied immediately. Those real human stories are exactly what business leaders need to hear. David realized that once again, his daughter was making decisions that would change their lives forever. But looking at her confident, caring expression, he knew she was ready for whatever came next. We'll do it, David said finally. Emma will be your keynote speaker. Emma's face lit up with excitement. Mr. Tanaka, I promise to help people understand each other better. 2 weeks later, David stood in the luxurious Chen Industries corporate apartment that Rebecca had arranged for them, watching Emma practice her keynote speech in front of their bathroom mirror. Their new home overlooked Boston Harbor and contained more space than their old apartment building's entire first floor. Good morning, business leaders from around the world, Emma recited carefully, adjusting her posture like the presentation coach had taught her. My name is Emma Martinez and I'm 6 years old. I know that might seem really young to be talking about international business, but I think sometimes young people can see things that adults might miss. David marveled at how much his daughter had grown in confidence over the past month. Rebecca had arranged for Emma to work with child psychologists, public speaking coaches, and even a team of international business professors who were amazed by her intuitive understanding of cross-cultural dynamics. The financial changes had been dramatic and swift. David's first paycheck from Chen Industries was larger than his entire previous year's income. Emma's consulting fees were being deposited into a college fund that would ensure her education anywhere in the world. But more importantly, Emma was thriving in her new role as the company's cultural consultant. Papa, do you think people will listen to me? Emma asked, turning away from the mirror with a trace of nervousness. Sweetheart, Mr. Tanaka specifically requested you because he believes you have something important to say, David replied reassuringly. And remember, you've already helped save a $30 million deal and solved problems that cost his company millions. Emma nodded thoughtfully. I've been thinking about what Mrs. Wong said yesterday. She told me that when she first came to America, she felt scared because people seemed impatient with her accent. But then she realized that most people weren't mean. They just didn't understand that her careful English showed respect, not slowness. That's a beautiful story to include in your speech, David encouraged. The doorbell rang, and David opened it to find Rebecca holding an enormous bouquet of flowers and a professionally wrapped gift box. "These just arrived from Mr. Tanaka's office in Tokyo," Rebecca announced excitedly. "Emma, there's a personal note for you." Emma carefully opened the elegant envelope and read aloud, "Dear Miss Emma, I am honored that you will share your wisdom with business leaders from around the world. Your words will help create understanding between people who speak different languages, but share the same hopes for success and friendship. With respect and admiration, Hiroshi Tanaka." Inside the gift box was an exquisite silk scarf embroidered with flowers from different countries: cherry blossoms from Japan, roses from America, peonies from China, lavender from France, and tropical flowers from Brazil. "Oh my goodness," Emma breathed, holding up the scarf. "It's like all the countries holding hands through flowers." Rebecca wiped away a tear. "Emma, that scarf cost more than most people make in a month. Mr. Tanaka clearly sees something very special in you." That evening, as David tucked Emma into her new bed in their spacious bedroom, she looked up at him with those wise green eyes. "Dad, I'm a little scared about speaking to all those important business people," she admitted honestly. David sat on the edge of her bed. "You know what, sweetheart? Being nervous means you care about doing a good job. But remember, you're not trying to impress anyone with big words or complicated ideas. You're just sharing what you've learned about understanding people." "Mrs. Wong said something really smart today," Emma continued. "She said that when people from different places work together, they can create something more beautiful than any of them could make alone. Like her dumplings, they use Chinese techniques, but American ingredients, and they taste better than either country's food by itself." David smiled, amazed once again by the wisdom that seemed to flow naturally from his daughter. "That sounds like exactly the kind of insight that business leaders need to hear." "Papa, do you think Mama would be proud of us now?" Emma asked quietly. David's heart clenched. Emma rarely mentioned her mother, who had left them when the financial pressures became too overwhelming. "I think she would be amazed by the incredible person you're becoming," he said truthfully. Emma smiled peacefully. "Tomorrow I'm going to tell all those business people about Mrs. Wong's dumplings and how different countries can make something beautiful together." As David turned off the light, he realized that his daughter wasn't just preparing to give a speech. She was preparing to change how the world thought about international cooperation. And somehow, a 6-year-old girl from a struggling Boston family was exactly the teacher the business world needed. The morning of Emma's departure to Tokyo, David stood in their apartment kitchen making breakfast, his hands shaking slightly with nervous energy. Emma sat at the table, methodically reviewing note cards while eating her cereal, as calm as if she were preparing for a normal school day. "Papa, I've been thinking about something important," Emma said between spoonfuls. "What if the business people don't understand why a little kid is giving them advice?" Before David could respond, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Rebecca's office number. "David, you need to turn on the business news right now." Rebecca's voice was tight with excitement and concern. "Channel 7. Immediately, David grabbed the remote and switched to the financial news network. A perfectly groomed anchor was speaking directly into the camera. In an unprecedented move, Tanaka Industries has announced that their International Business Summit will feature the world's youngest keynote speaker, 6-year-old Emma Martinez from Boston, Massachusetts. Emma dropped her spoon and stared at the television as her school photo appeared on screen. "Critics are calling this a publicity stunt," the anchor continued, while supporters argue that fresh perspectives are exactly what international business needs. The question remains, can a 6-year-old child really offer valuable insights to Fortune 500 executives? The scene cut to a business professor being interviewed. While Miss Martinez may have some natural linguistic abilities, the idea that she can advise seasoned international business professionals is frankly absurd. This trivializes the complex work of cross-cultural business relationships. Emma's face fell as she watched the criticism unfold on screen. "Papa, they think I'm just a silly little kid playing dress-up." David turned off the television and knelt beside Emma's chair. "Sweetheart, do you remember what happened when you identified that translation error? Those critics don't know about the $30 million deal you saved, or the Brazilian partnership problem you solved for Mr. Tanaka." "But what if they're right?" Emma asked, her confidence wavering for the first time. What if I don't really understand business and I've just been lucky? The doorbell rang and David opened it to find Mrs. Wong standing in the hallway, holding a small wrapped package and wearing her best dress. "Emma," Mrs. Wong said in careful English, "I come to give you something very important before big trip." Emma perked up immediately and ran to hug the elderly woman. Mrs. Wong handed her the package, which contained a small jade pendant on a delicate chain. "This pendant belonged to my grandmother in China," Mrs. Wong explained. "She give to me when I start working for international company in Shanghai." She say, "When people doubt you because you different, remember that difference is your strength, not weakness." Emma held the pendant carefully, her eyes wide with the significance of the gift. "Emma," Mrs. Wong continued, "you helped me feel understood in America when I thought nobody care about old Chinese woman with broken English. You see heart behind my words when other people only hear accent. This is very special gift. Not everyone can do this. But the people on TV said I'm too young to understand business," Emma said sadly. Mrs. Wong smiled warmly. "Emma, I work 30 years in business. Most business problems happen because people forget that business is about people, not just money. You understand people better than most adults I know." Rebecca arrived an hour later to drive them to the airport, her face glowing with excitement. "Emma, I just got off the phone with Mr. Tanaka. The registration for the summit has increased by 40% since they announced your keynote. Business leaders from around the world want to hear what you have to say." During the car ride to Logan Airport, Emma stared out the window unusually quiet. Finally she spoke. "Ms. Chen, what if I disappoint everyone? What if Mr. Tanaka made a mistake choosing me?" Rebecca pulled the car over and turned to face Emma directly. "Sweetheart, let me tell you something about business that most people don't understand. The biggest problems in international business don't come from complicated contracts or financial disagreements. They come from people misunderstanding each other across cultural differences." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "Emma, you have a gift for seeing past language barriers straight to what people really mean and feel. That's not something you can learn in business school. It's something you're born with and develop through genuine caring about people." Emma touched Mrs. Wong's jade pendant hanging around her neck. "So I should just be myself and share what I've learned about understanding people?" "Exactly," Rebecca replied. "Don't try to sound like a business expert. Just tell your stories about Mrs. Wong, Mr. Sato, and what you've observed about how people from different cultures show respect and build trust." As their plane lifted off from Boston, Emma pressed her face to the window, watching her city shrink below. "Papa, I'm ready to help those business people understand each other better." David squeezed her hand, knowing that whatever happened in Tokyo, his daughter was about to make history. The Tokyo Business Summit took place in a gleaming convention center that seemed to stretch endlessly in every direction. David stood backstage with Emma, both of them overwhelmed by the scope of the event. Through the curtains, they could see an auditorium filled with over 2,000 business executives from around the world. "Ladies and gentlemen," the announcer's voice boomed across the venue, "please welcome our keynote speaker, 6-year-old cultural consultant, Emma Martinez." Emma took a deep breath, touched Mrs. Wong's jade pendant for luck, and walked onto the stage with surprising confidence. The massive audience fell completely silent. Thousands of eyes focused on the small figure approaching the podium. A technician quickly adjusted the microphone to Emma's height, and she looked out at the sea of faces with remarkable composure. "Good morning, everyone," Emma began, her clear voice carrying perfectly through the sound system. "My name is Emma Martinez, and I'm 6 years old. I know that might seem really young to be talking about international business, but I think sometimes children can see things that adults might forget." A murmur rippled through the audience, some skeptical, others curious. "I want to start by telling you about my friend Mrs. Wong," Emma continued, settling into the rhythm of storytelling. "She's from China, and she owns a grocery store in my neighborhood in Boston. When she first came to America, people sometimes got impatient with her because her English was careful and slow. They thought she didn't understand business or was wasting their time." Emma paused, scanning the audience with those wise green eyes. But Mrs. Wong wasn't slow. She was being respectful. In her culture, speaking carefully and thoughtfully shows that you take the conversation seriously. When people rushed her or seemed annoyed, it hurt her feelings. Not because she couldn't understand, but because she felt like they didn't respect her way of showing respect. The audience was now completely attentive, leaning forward to catch every word. "I learned something important from Mrs. Wong. When people from different countries seem difficult or strange, they're usually just showing respect or friendship in a way that's normal for them but different for you. Emma walked slightly away from the podium, becoming more animated as she warmed to her topic. For example, my friend Mr. Sato, who owns the sushi restaurant, taught me that in Japanese business culture, taking time to build personal relationships isn't wasting time. It's the most important part of business. He said Americans sometimes think Japanese business people are too slow to make decisions, but really they're making sure everyone feels respected and included. Several Japanese executives in the audience nodded approvingly, and I learned from helping my dad with translation work that sometimes the most important part of understanding someone isn't the exact words they use, it's the feelings and cultural meanings behind those words. Emma's voice grew stronger and more confident as she continued. I think lots of business problems happen because people are good at speaking their own cultural language, but not very good at listening to other people's cultural languages. It's like everyone is trying to be polite and respectful, but they're using different rules for what polite and respectful look like. The massive auditorium was now completely silent except for Emma's voice. So maybe instead of getting frustrated when someone does business differently than we expect, we could get curious. Instead of thinking they're doing this wrong, we could think, I wonder what this means in their culture, or I wonder how they show respect in their country. Emma paused, looking directly at different sections of the audience. Mrs. Wong taught me that when people from different places work together with understanding and patience, they can create something more beautiful and successful than any of them could create alone. Like her dumplings, they use Chinese techniques with American ingredients, and they're more delicious than either country's food by itself. The analogy drew warm chuckles and nods throughout the audience. I think international business could be like Mrs. Wong's dumplings, taking the best ideas and approaches from different cultures and combining them into something amazing that helps everyone succeed. Emma returned to the podium for her conclusion. Thank you for listening to me today. I hope I've helped you remember that behind every different way of doing business, there are people who want the same things you want: respect, success, and good relationships. We just sometimes use different ways to show it. The silence that followed seemed to last forever. Then slowly one person began clapping, then another. Within seconds, the entire auditorium erupted in thunderous applause that continued for several minutes. As Emma walked off the stage, David rushed to embrace her, tears streaming down his face. His 6-year-old daughter had just delivered one of the most impactful business presentations he'd ever witnessed. 3 months after Emma's triumphant Tokyo keynote, David stood in the reception area of Chen Industries' newly expanded International Communications Department. The walls were covered with framed newspaper articles about Emma's speech, including headlines like "6-year-old revolutionizes international business" and "Child prodigy teaches Fortune 500 companies about cultural understanding." Emma sat in her specially designed workspace, child-sized furniture in a corner of the main office, reviewing translation documents while coloring in a unicorn picture. She had somehow mastered the ability to switch seamlessly between serious business consultation and normal 6-year-old activities. "Emma," Rebecca called from her office, "could you join our video conference with the Munich office? They're having communication difficulties with their suppliers in Vietnam." Emma put down her crayons and walked to the conference room with the professional confidence of someone far beyond her years. Within 20 minutes, she had identified that the Vietnamese suppliers were expressing concern about quality standards through indirect discussions about delivery schedules, exactly the type of cultural miscommunication she'd become famous for solving. After the call, Rebecca pulled David aside privately. "David, I need to show you something that's going to change your lives again." She handed him a thick folder labeled "Confidential, Martinez Family Opportunities." 3 major universities want to study Emma's linguistic development," Rebecca began. "Harvard, MIT, and Stanford are offering full scholarships plus research stipends. International businesses are requesting Emma's consultation services directly. We've received over 200 inquiries since Tokyo." David's eyes widened as he scanned the documents. "Rebecca, these numbers are incredible." "There's more," Rebecca continued. "Publishing companies want to work with Emma on children's books about cultural understanding. Television networks are interested in educational programming, and the United Nations has formally invited her to speak at their annual conference on global cooperation." David felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the opportunities. "It's amazing, but I want to make sure Emma stays grounded and has a normal childhood." "Papa," Emma appeared in the doorway, having obviously overheard the conversation. "What's a normal childhood?" David laughed despite his concerns. "Well, sweetheart, Most 6-year-olds don't advise Fortune 500 companies or give keynote speeches to international business leaders. Emma considered this seriously. But most 6-year-olds don't have friends like Mrs. Wong and Mr. Sato who teach them about different cultures. And most 6-year-olds don't get to help people understand each other better across countries. She climbed into David's lap with her characteristic directness. Dad, I like helping people solve communication problems. It makes me happy when businesses can work together better because they understand each other's cultural languages. Rebecca smiled warmly. Emma, you've created something entirely new in the business world. Companies are starting to hire cultural consultants specifically because of your influence. You've shown everyone that understanding people is just as important as understanding spreadsheets and contracts. Mrs. Wong says I have a gift for seeing heart behind words, Emma said matter-of-factly. She taught me that gifts are supposed to be shared to help people, not hidden away. David looked at his remarkable daughter, then at Rebecca, then at the folder full of extraordinary opportunities. 6 months ago, they had been facing eviction and wondering where their next meal would come from. Now Emma was revolutionizing international business communication and inspiring companies worldwide to prioritize cultural understanding. What do you want to do, Emma? David asked, letting his daughter guide their decision as she had so many times before. Emma thought carefully, as she always did when facing important choices. I want to keep helping people understand each other better. But I also want to keep learning from Mrs. Wong and Mr. Sato and playing with my stuffed animals and coloring pictures. That sounds like the perfect balance, Rebecca said with obvious affection. That evening, as David tucked Emma into bed in their beautiful apartment overlooking Boston Harbor, she looked up at him with those impossibly wise green eyes. Papa, do you remember when we were scared about the eviction notice and didn't know how we'd buy groceries? I remember, David said softly, I think sometimes scary things happen to push us toward amazing things we never would have discovered otherwise, Emma said with the philosophical depth that continually amazed him. David kissed her forehead, marveling at how a 6-year-old girl's gift for understanding people across cultural barriers had transformed not just their lives, but the entire international business world's approach to cross-cultural communication. Good night, sweetheart, he whispered. Tomorrow will bring new adventures. Good night, Papa, Emma replied sleepily. And tomorrow we'll help more people understand each other better. As David turned off the light, he realized that Emma's greatest gift wasn't her ability to speak 5 languages. It was her capacity to see the humanity behind cultural differences and help others do the same. His daughter had taught the business world that successful international cooperation wasn't about perfect translations, but about perfect understanding of the human heart that beats the same in every culture. Outside their window, the lights of Boston Harbor sparkled like stars, and somewhere across the world, business leaders were learning to listen not just to words, but to the cultural meanings behind them, thanks to the wisdom of a 6-year-old girl who saw beyond language barriers straight to the universal human desire for respect, understanding, and connection.